Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healing Hour. I am your host, Sarah Fargo O'Brien, and I'm happy to be, bringing you another episode of the Healing Hour today. If you are here, pop in. Let me know that you are here. I would love to give you a shout out. Today, we're going to be talking about OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. And sort of what I've been doing here, July and August, is going over lots of mental health disorders that I specialize in my practice, in my psychotherapy practice. I'm in my office now. Yes, I do almost everything virtually these days, which I thought I would hate, but now I love. And I'll explain in a little bit why that's absolutely important for days like today, working virtually. So like I do every week here, we talk about different healing topics. I'm a subject matter expert in trauma-informed care and leadership. And so I believe that trauma-informed care is the universal healing how to interact with people, how to be a leader, how to be a coworker, how to be a team lead, how to be an executive, how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a spouse, friend, sibling. Trauma-informed is the way. And I believe that if we adopt trauma-informed principles and practices into everything that we do, that more people will find healing and safety, and there will be less perpetuating of harm and maybe actually reduction in harm as people find healing and safety. So if you need somebody to speak on that, to write on that, to train your team in trauma-informed care practices, I am available. You can find all information that you need about me and how to contact me on my website at www.sarahobrienlcsw.com. That website will also be on my slide deck here in a minute if you want to grab it that way. Let's see. Okay, I think that's like some announcements for today. Coffee. Let me do a check-in and then I'll do my 3 deep breaths, and feel free to take them with me. I'll have a couple more announcements about some things I have going on at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for that. An opportunity to get a freebie as related to all the breathing exercises I've been posting on my LinkedIn this week. And let me do a check-in. It's unseasonably cool here in Virginia in August, as it has been most of the month. It is only like 70 degrees out right now and breezy, which is weird weather-wise for Virginia in August, but I'm not complaining because I didn't sweat my face off walking my dog this morning. It was actually lovely. So that was my morning. But I'm also not feeling well today. I'm putting on my best face, which normally I don't do when I don't feel well, but I feel like I kind of can today. But physically, I don't feel very well. Emotionally, I don't feel very well. I'm currently sitting on a heating pad, which is why virtual work is working for me right now. If I had to be somewhere in person this morning, I would have had to call in sick, basically. But because I can sit here comfortably in a temperature that makes sense for me in my office and in some comfortable clothing that you guys can't see below the surface and my heat pad and all of that, then I can be here with you guys today and actually do some work instead of having to call in sick. So that's where I am today, but I have prepared in advance to talk about OCD. So no last minute here. The slide deck has been done. So hopefully it'll all jar my memory when we get going. All right, let's do 3 deep breaths and then we will dive into the content. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Try to elongate that exhale. If you want to know the science behind deep breathing and particularly things like elongating the exhale, be sure to check out my LinkedIn feed this week. I have been posting about some breathing techniques, some deep breathing techniques. I'll be posting some more in September as breath and body and some healing through breathing is going to be our content topic in the Integrate Trauma Informed Network app. So we have a mental health support app for folks. It's free to download, and all of our affinity group members and subject matter experts contribute the content to that app. So it's from all of our highly intelligent, high performing, super awesome folks. I'm lucky to get to work with them and learn from them. So more on deep breathing in the Integrate app coming up in September, more of that on my feed, but check it out this week. And be sure to go to my website, www.sarahobrienlcsw.com, to sign up for my newsletter. So if you sign up on my website for my newsletter that's going to come out next week, once a month, you will get access to the freebies. So go there, do that. Deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Number 1. Slow exhale. It's helpful to make that swishing sound. Number 2, inhale. Slow exhale. And number 3, inhale. Slow, steady exhale. Okay, that helps me feel like a little less tense, even though things are hurting today, not feeling very great. But I'm here. Let's learn about obsessive compulsive disorder. What do we know? Let's see. Let me get back over here. Obsessive compulsive disorder, you have repeated unwanted thoughts and or perform repeated actions that you feel you can't control. I'm going to get into some more definitions, types, symptoms of obsession, symptoms of compulsions, causes, links to other disorders, and treatments. Got a lot to cover today as I research these topics, guys. Just to make sure that I am most up to date. I look for things that are current. I review about 5 to 10 articles, if not more, for each of these slide decks that I put on for you. So honestly, it takes like a few hours of work to prepare this content and to go through some research articles. So like I've said before, these are kind of bringing you like a mini webinar. This is like what I would do if I was going to speak or train essentially at your organization or with your team. Of course, if your team is present, it would be much more interactive and they could ask questions and things like that. But essentially, we have info that I research, make palatable via a slide deck, and then of course answer questions, give examples, that kind of thing. So it kind of looks like this. If you need somebody to talk on any of the topics that you've seen on my podcast or you've seen me write about or any place else, let me know. I would love to do that with your team or with your organization. My buddy is in the house. Hi, Jason Forehand. And his podcast, oh my gosh, time to change. I think it's time to change. Check out Jason Forehand's podcast. It just like won an award or something and like top 5 nonprofit podcast, which is like freaking awesome. And so he just posted about that yesterday. Go check out his podcast. He's got some cool guests on, way cooler than my show. He's got awesome people on. Thank you, Jason. He says, I appreciate the knowledge you share each week. I'm so glad that you find it valuable. Truly, truly do. And Leanna is here. Yes, my tried and true folks. Hi, Leanna. I'm happy to see you. Good morning. I wonder what it feels like where you are, Leanna, which I think is in Minnesota. It's been super cool here. I wonder if it's the same there. Don't know what it's doing in New York. I don't know. We have that big storm coming. It doesn't look like Virginia is going to get rain, but I'm sure that's why the weather is not real warm right now. I appreciate you being here, Leanna. Appreciate you being here, Jason, and popping in to let me know that you're here. If you're here, oh, yes, I got it. Okay. Jason says, time to change. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. I'm glad. Time to Change. Good. I'm glad I got that right. Yes. Hashtag Time to Change is Jason's podcast. And yes, and he's talking about his nonprofit HR4U and Transformation Kitchen, which I have the privilege of being the director of student wellness on. So looking forward to the growth of his nonprofit and the amazing good he is going to do with that. Oh, rain in New York. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Leanna and Chasen are talking. I love this. Fantastic, guys. All right, let's jump in. Obsessive compulsive disorder. If you're here, drop me a message in the chat. If I don't highlight your message during the show, it's because I don't see it. I don't know why some LinkedIn chats messages come through and some don't. And apparently, if you're watching from YouTube, none of those chat messages come through to me. So just leave your comment or your question or whatever, and I'll come through after the show, answer anything, say hello to you that way. So I don't know why it's like that. Feel free to check it on your LinkedIn and see if you can sort it out. But hang tight. I will respond to any messages that don't come through on my screen after the show. Okay, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. This is a long-lasting disorder in which a person experiences uncontrollable and recurring thoughts, and a person also engages in repetitive behaviors or both. It could be one or the other or both. It's usually both. It's not always both. So let's break that down even further. What are obsessions? What are compulsions? Obsessions are repeated thoughts, urges, or mental images that are intrusive, unwanted, and make most people anxious. Compulsions are repetitive behaviors a person feels the strong urge to do, often in response to an obsession, this recurring or intrusive thought. Ultimately, a person feels driven to do these compulsive behaviors, compulsive actions to ease the stress and anxiety that the obsessive thoughts bring. It's a vicious little cycle, guys. For many people with OCD, the symptoms follow a theme and they don't involve all aspects of life. So they're usually sort of concentrated maybe in some areas. And we're going to talk about what those are. So hang tight. Although many people with OCD understand that their thoughts are unrealistic, they cannot be resolved by logic or reasoning. So logic or reasoning from the person or logic or reasoning from you is not going to matter. They know these thoughts are unrealistic. It still doesn't matter. With OCD, it brings a lot of distress because they can't get the thoughts off their mind, right? Even if they know that they're not realistic, having logic about that not being realistic doesn't get them off of the thought. Hopefully that makes sense. Obsessions are when intrusive thoughts get stuck in your mind. These thoughts may upset you, and you may be afraid to tell anyone about them. Compulsions can take several forms and follow themes, kind of like the obsessions. And compulsions are things you do to try to ease the anxiety your obsessions cause. This never works for long, but you can't seem to stop doing the compulsive behaviors, even when they take up lots of your time or interfere with your life. This is the vicious cycle, guys. Jason says, people seem all excited about saying they have ADHD or ADD or OCD, having all the Ds, as I say. Yeah, that's good. It hasn't been fun, especially growing up in a time period when in school they paddled you as a reaction to your behaviors, right? Yeah. Jason, you and I mean, they weren't paddling when I was in school, but they definitely didn't recognize this either. So we maybe from your generation to my generation got slightly better in how we treat children that have non-typical behaviors. It sucks that, it takes time and more research and harm that's caused for us to do better when we know better. And so it sucks that you were growing up in a time where they paddled you for behaviors. I grew up in a family where I was spanked for poor behaviors. So I understand that aspect of it. And yeah, I mean, the best I can say about that is they didn't know better, so they didn't do better, which is frustrating. I don't know. It's hard. It's maybe just the reality of the past we have to make do with. And people seeming excited to say it now, I'm not really sure why. Because if you actually have like one of these Ds, it's not very fun to live with. And it's sometimes difficult to manage. And with things like ADHD and OCD medications, which we're going to talk about treatments later, are some of the best treatment options. Those come with their own challenges and side effects, and getting prescriptions, medication shortages, meeting with your doctor. Not fun to have one of these Ds. But yes, it's like it's a fad or something, which is a little bit weird because we're talking about mental health disorders. And let me also make a distinction here. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but things like ADD, ADHD, OCD, these are only accurately diagnosed via psychological testing. So if you have not had psychological testing conducted by a licensed clinical psychologist trained in administering and reading the results of these psychological tests, then you can't say with full certainty that you have one of these disorders. It is the only way to be properly diagnosed. Not all mental health disorders are that way, but ADHD, ADD, and OCD are three that are absolutely require psychological testing for full and accurate diagnosis. I hope that responds to your comment, Jason. Thank you so much for dropping that in there. I love it when you drop those things in there because it's things that people say or things that people believe, but don't say to a mental health therapist, right? To get some clarity on. And so I'm glad that you sort of just bring that in. This is just the everyday stuff that I want people to know. And I love the way that Chasen sort of reflects on his own experiences, his own life, what he's gone through, as we look at through the lens of these disorders and thinking where things connect, where things don't, where he learned about certain things or didn't learn about certain things. And I love that because that's what we all need to do, right? Like for many of us, what we were taught as children was not correct. We know better now. We can do better now, but that does take some self-reflection and consideration of your experiences and how they've impacted you. Yeah, Chasen comes back and says, no, it's not fun. He said, I'm going to save this. Unfortunately, I can't be here the entire time. Come back and see the rest. Yes, please do that. More information that I've ever received about OCD. Yes, I got you. This is more information I've ever received about OCD. Oh, it's going to be great. Come back and watch it later. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate you popping in. It is going to be good. You're going to appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about types of OCD. These are the themes, sort of like categories. When I said obsessions sort of revolve around themes, and same with compulsions. These are kind of the themes, the types of OCD. Contamination, relationship, perfectionism, checking, sexual or sexual orientation, identity-based OCD symptoms, harm or violence related, superstitious and religious and moral, and pure O. And pure O, this phrase means purely obsessional. In other words, you have obsessions but no compulsions that others can see. That doesn't mean that you don't have compulsions. You just usually do them mentally or internally. All right, let's break down symptoms of obsessions. Obsessive thoughts and OCD often involve a feared outcome, something we don't want to happen. Depending on the type of obsession experienced will depend on the feared outcome. For example, fear of losing something important, fear of upsetting someone, fear for their loved one's safety. Obsessions are recurrent and persistent thoughts, impulses, or images that are intrusive and cause great anxiety. These thoughts are not simply excessive worries about real life issues. This is not the same, guys. Like, we are talking about a diagnosable health disorder. So excessive worry about real things happening in life is not OCD. There is to say, I guess, sort of medically, a pathological nature to these disorders. It's not things that the typical person experiences, like worry or fear, it is to an excessive degree, and it impairs functioning and life satisfaction. And that's one of the differences. Okay, with obsessions, a person attempts to ignore, suppress, or neutralize these obsessions with some other thought or action. This is where compulsions often come in. And the person is able to recognize that these thoughts are a product of their own mind. That's supposed to say of their own mind. So they know that, like, in cases of psychosis, like it's coming outside of themselves. It's not that. They know these are thoughts in their own heads, but they're still very distressing. Andrew Stout is here. Hello, Andrew. Good morning. Welcome to the show. We are talking about OCD. Hopefully you can learn something. Jason says he's already learned something. Jason says this is more information than he's ever received about OCD. And we've only been talking about it for like 5 to 10 minutes, which is amazing. Okay. Themes of obsessions related to, let me go back and show you those. And I wish I could keep this up the whole time. Contamination, relationship, perfectionism, checking, sexual, identity-based, harm or violence, superstitious, or moral. So now if we get into some themes of obsession, it'd be fear of contamination or dirt, doubting and having a hard time dealing with uncertainty, aggressive or horrific thoughts about losing control and harming yourself or others, unwanted sexual or religious thoughts, having a hard time dealing with things that aren't absolute or aren't certain. That goes back to the hard time with things that are with uncertainty, needing things to be orderly and balanced, feeling that things are absolutely right or wrong with no in between, fear of making mistakes and having to be perfect, and constantly needing to be reassured. So these are like thought themes that can come from these OCD types, these themes. Okay, so, relationship, religious, moral, identity-based, those types of obsessions would be things like doubting and having a hard time dealing with uncertainty, constantly needing to be reassured, fear of making mistakes, feelings that things are absolutely right or wrong. Those types of things come from maybe the less known and understood parts of OCD. People maybe think of OCD often as the contamination or the checking OCD. So a lot of the hand washing, the fear of dirt, or the constantly checking, like the stove, the doors, and the locks, and that kind of thing. But there really are lots of other kinds of OCD, and honestly, you're probably not going to notice their compulsive behaviors as much. All right, let's give some examples of obsession symptoms based on these themes. Fear of being contaminated by touching objects others have touched, right? So if we talk about this one, fear of contamination or dirt, then an example is fear of being contaminated by touching objects others have touched. You could fear contamination or dirt in other ways. Maybe it's if you're just in the presence of other people, or if you touch dirty clothing or actual dirt, so there are different ways that this could manifest. This is just an example. Fear of being contaminated by touching objects others have touched. Doubts that you've locked the door, turned off the stove, those people probably recognize. Thoughts about shouting obscenities or not acting the right way in public. Now, let's be clear. It's not that they shout obscenities in public. It's that they are afraid they are going to shout obscenities in public, and they're having obsessive thoughts about that, even if they have never engaged in that action. Sometimes people struggle with unpleasant sexual images or images of driving your car into a crowd of people. Okay, let's also be clear here. It's not that folks want to drive their car into a crowd of people. This is an unwanted, intrusive thought or image that they are deeply distressed by. They do not want to actually drive their car into a crowd of people, but having a thought about this over and over and over again, as you can imagine, creates a lot of distress and anxiety in somebody. Some other examples of obsession symptoms based on these themes: staying away from situations that can cause obsession, such as shaking hands, right? This is if you have fear of contamination by touching objects that have been touched, then you're probably not going to touch somebody's hand or shake their hand. So you avoid. And intense stress when objects aren't orderly or facing a certain way. Okay. So obsessive thoughts, we said are repetitive and excessive, right? Like, so lots going on constantly. Another aspect of obsessions are intrusive thoughts, things that pop in there. We all have intrusive thoughts from time to time. But these really intrusive thoughts are often the catalyst for an obsession, where we just like keep thinking about the intrusive thought. So intrusive thoughts are unwanted thoughts that come into your mind sometimes for no reason. When you have obsessive compulsive disorder, an intrusive thought can turn into an obsession, and you might develop compulsions to try to get rid of your intrusive thoughts. An intrusive thought can take the form of a memory, an urge, a mental image, or an emotion or sensation. Okay, so I really think that this was something interesting that I came across that was maybe new for me too. So particularly an intrusive thought being an emotion or a sensation that is unwanted, or an urge that is unwanted. And the stress that comes from having one of these experiences, an emotion, a sensation, an urge that is unwanted, and you can't stop thinking about it. Which is interesting. Having a memory or a mental image makes sense to me. But I like that I sort of found this new piece of information for me as well, and that it includes these other things. And it actually like makes a lot of sense based on myself and treatment of individuals with OCD. So if you guys didn't know that about me, I'm diagnosed with OCD. I did have psychological testing. I went and had psychological testing done because I thought I had ADHD. This was just a few years ago, maybe about 3 years ago. I did psychological testing. So it's been suspected that I've had OCD probably my entire life, but I only got psychological testing in my mid-30s. So not really medically managing it until that point. And really, I thought the symptoms I was having were related to ADHD. Come to find out, it's a lot of trauma, and it was really that, and having fogginess and fatigue and forgetfulness and problems with concentration and things like that were actually not ADHD or OCD, but things related to my trauma and my nervous system losing it, basically my nervous system just like going out of whack because I needed to do some things differently to heal and take care of myself. But that did lead to me getting formally diagnosed with OCD, which makes a lot of other things in my life make sense. Including this information that an urge or an emotion or a sensation. Many sensory things are difficult for me. And this makes sense. And it's hard for me to not focus on it when one of those things is happening or I experience it. Okay, so something else with OCD, there are some distressing and persistent beliefs related to the other symptoms of like obsessions and compulsions. So I think these things kind of contribute to having obsessive thoughts because you're constantly trying to figure out how to fix or change that, right? So that it doesn't happen. And so sometimes that's like thinking about it over and over again to come up with options, or, right, we end up doing something else, one of our ritual behaviors, compulsive behaviors, to try to manage the obsession and what we're afraid might happen, right? If that thought comes true or comes to fruition. So some distressing and persistent beliefs that come with OCD. And let's be clear, obsessions aren't the same as just having like unwanted thoughts. It's that they don't go away. Okay. These thoughts are distressing and persistent. Certain beliefs are also strongly connected to OCD, and they're thought to contribute to or worsen its symptoms, which makes sense to me that these beliefs would contribute to worsening, particularly obsession symptoms. So, what are those beliefs? Let me list them off first. Inflated responsibility, overimportance of thoughts, control of thoughts, perfectionism, overestimation of threat, intolerance of uncertainty. So these are persistent beliefs that are distressing that make obsessive thoughts worse for individuals with OCD. I hope that is clear. What are they? And what do they mean? Inflated responsibility means believing you can cause or prevent negative outcomes that aren't really in your control. Again, folks don't want this inflated sense of responsibility. They just have this belief with their OCD. So they believe that by things that they think and or things that they do and their compulsions can either cause or prevent negative outcomes. Now, logic, right, would say, hey, like that's not going to happen. But we already talked about logic doesn't really exist in OCD. That doesn't move us off the obsessive thought or move us away from this persistent belief. Another one is overimportance of thoughts, feeling as if the thought of doing something bad, like hurting someone or driving your car into a crowd of people, is morally the same as doing it. So putting lots of emphasis on just the thought of hurting somebody as that makes you an absolutely terrible person. And then there's lots of distress that comes from that. Right. That thinking something is morally the same as doing something. That's a belief. Often that comes in OCD. Control of thoughts, a belief that it's necessary and possible to have total control over your own thoughts. Yep, and not true. Perfectionism, believing that being imperfect is unacceptable. I absolutely fall into this one. Perfectionism has been definitely present in my life for as long as I can remember, which means I've probably had OCD for as long as I can remember. There's a belief also that there's an overestimation of threat, the belief that catastrophic events are very likely, when we know catastrophic events are not very likely. They happen, but the probability of them is low, even though they're possible. But overestimation of threat is like we bring that probability up, even if that's not logical or reasonable. Intolerance of uncertainty, a strong need to know what will happen or to know that nothing bad will happen. I absolutely struggle with this belief as well. I don't know what to say about it. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It's just a big driver. It's hard. It's very uncomfortable if things are uncertain for me, or if I don't know what will happen. As you can imagine, with a lot of individuals with anxiety, that's a manifestation of anxiety, right? Is like fear of the unknown or fear of something happening in the future that hasn't happened yet, right? But with OCD, this goes beyond that, and it's like an absolute intolerance of uncertainty, meaning they get extremely distressed if things are uncertain. Okay, if you have questions about those beliefs, let me know. I'm sorry for all my moving around today, guys. My back is really bothering me, and I can't seem to get comfortable. Okay. Compulsions, symptoms of compulsions or compulsive behaviors. Compulsion symptoms would also relate to the obsession, right? So if there are contamination obsessions, there likely will be contamination compulsions. And so you would feel the absolute need to do these compulsive behaviors even if you don't want to. And that's kind of the idea with OCD, guys. It's like a drive coming behind you that's saying, think this, think this, think this, do this, do this, do this. And even though you know it's not logical, you can't get away from this like pending incoming train that is just really forceful and telling you what you need to think and what you need to do. And you can't really do anything else until you do all of that. It's very disruptive and very busy in somebody's mind. And so that if you try not to do the act, the compulsive behavior, the urge to do it gets stronger and stronger until you can't hold off any longer. And this is sort of like the urge is this obsession. Like we can't stop thinking about the compulsive behavior that I need to do. Even if I try not to think about it, the thinking about it just gets bigger and stronger and stronger. And then eventually we have to do the behavior because that's the only way to get it off of our mind. Very vicious cycle in OCD. So to keep that from happening, like the urge getting stronger and stronger, you make rules that you need to follow. And when you follow them, you feel relief, but it's temporary. Often that's like the compulsions are following rules. I mean, it's maybe hard for me to give an exact example of this because I've really been working on this myself in my healing journey, but making rules for things, particularly for my own behavior, has been a symptom of my OCD for my whole life. I make rules about lots of things, and if I follow the rules, then I'm okay. And if I don't, then I'm not, kind of a thing. If I can think of an example as I go, I'll let you guys know, of course. Okay, so some common forms of compulsions. Just kind of like we had like themes of obsessions. These forms of compulsions are kind of the themes of compulsions, more or less. So forms of compulsive behaviors include rituals, rumination and correcting thoughts, repetitive checking, looking for reassurance or avoiding. So some examples of compulsions include checking, counting, orderliness, washing and cleaning, repeating words or phrases mentally, repeating an action, following a strict routine. I engage in some checking, counting, orderliness, following a strict routine, and sometimes repeating words and phrases mentally. That's why, like, when we talk about pure O or even some of these other forms of OCD, they maybe aren't clear or obvious to other people. Like it's probably not obvious to other people, maybe unless you like know me really intimately, which means you probably have to live with me to see me engage in any of these things. A lot of the compulsions related to my OCD are internal or things that I do like in my thoughts, like checking or I mean like counting like a count in my head and those types of things. So other people don't see it, but it's happening. These compulsions are beyond reason, like I've said, and often don't relate to the issue they're intended to fix. These behaviors are a way to manage the anxiety a person feels, usually from an unwanted thought or obsession, right? So, let's see if I can give an example. I can't right now, but I might have one on another page. Okay, I am going to go into examples of each of these. Good. Look, guys, I forgot what was even on my slide deck since I did it last week. Okay, look, and I even got better. I kept these over on the side for you. So the forms of compulsive behaviors that we're going to go into more detailed examples of are rituals, rumination and correcting thoughts, repetitive checking, looking for reassurance, and avoiding. Starting with rituals. Saying things out loud or to yourself over and over again would be a ritual. Washing your hands or taking showers repeatedly is a ritual. Excessive cleaning is a ritual. Arranging things in a particular way is a ritual. Touching items in a certain way or at a certain time is a ritual. Rumination, going over the same thing in your mind over and over. That's rumination. Researching your obsession online, rumination. Trying to stop intrusive thoughts by thinking about what they mean, rumination. I do most of these. I don't research things online as much, but going over things in my mind again and again and trying to stop intrusive thoughts by thinking about what they mean. I have lost so much of my life to this and been in so much distress as a result of this. I laugh about it now, but like trying to stop intrusive thoughts by thinking about what they mean will literally just take me into dysregulation. It is really hard to stop rumination. Okay, next, correcting thoughts. Counting to a particular number, saying something in your head or out loud over and over again. These are correcting thoughts. So correcting unwanted thoughts. Trying to replace an intrusive thought or feeling with a different one. Repeating an act until it feels right to you. Counting. Trying to replace an intrusive thought with a different one. Yeah, I fall into that. Rumination and correcting thoughts are like big areas of compulsions for me. Okay, examples of repetitive checking. You could repetitively check your body or clothes for dirt. Repetitively check doors to make sure they're locked. Repetitively check lights or appliances to make sure they're off. Repetitively check your phone to see if you've texted or posted something offensive, even though you haven't. Repetitively checking the route you took home to make sure you didn't cause a wreck. Sometimes this even means for people, they'll like reverse their drive and go back and check and then come again. That would be a compulsive behavior that absolutely takes time. And repetitively checking your memory to make sure something you thought about didn't actually happen, right? These are behaviors. It may not seem like it's a behavior, but this is a compulsive behavior. Repetitive checking. Examples of looking for reassurance. Apologizing to someone over and over again. Keep asking those around you whether everything is okay. I absolutely do that. Looking for reassurance is another compulsive behavior for me. Keep telling yourself your intrusive thoughts aren't real. Say or do things to see how others react. This would be looking for reassurance, compulsive behaviors, and ask others what your intrusive thoughts mean. Definitely have done that. Lots of this one for me too. Okay, and the last one that we're looking at of common forms of compulsions and examples within those: avoidance. So this would be avoiding things that make you feel anxious. So you may remove knives or other things from your home that could injure you or someone else. This is not somebody that we're concerned about injuring themselves or somebody else. This is somebody who is having obsessive thoughts about hurting themselves or somebody else with zero history of action on this. And so the extreme, what this really looks like and why it's OCD and not just something else is that you need knives for all kinds of things. Butter knives to spread, other knives to cut, and they remove knives entirely for fear that something could happen when we need them. So then they might live without knives, and then trying to do everything that you would live, work, kitchen, whatever, without knives might be difficult. That's avoidance. That is compulsive avoidance in at a level that is causing dysfunction. Another example of avoidance is putting off doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, procrastinating. Stop doing things that trigger your anxiety, such as driving if you're afraid of an accident. That's avoidance. And staying away from certain people, avoidance. Okay, let's go into some more specific examples of compulsive behaviors. So when we're talking about obsessions, right? The obsession is fear of dirt or contamination. The obsessive intrusive thought is thinking that your hands are contaminated when you touch things that other people have touched. And you can't stop thinking about it. Can't stop thinking about how your hands are dirty, how your hands are dirty, how your hands are dirty, how your hands are dirty. And so because of that obsession that you can't stop, you wash your hands. And then the thought comes back and you wash your hands again, and you wash your hands again, and you wash your hands again, and you wash your hands again. That's the compulsive behavior that comes with the obsession. This is one that people probably recognize, and that's maybe like the easiest to put into an example, but it is not the only form of OCD. Please understand that. I do not have any issue with my hands feeling dirty, touching things other people touch. washing or not washing my hands. Like that's not part of my OCD. So let's be clear. It may not look like that. Counting in certain patterns. This one I absolutely did. This was most prevalent. These symptoms were at their highest for me when I was in school, particularly in college. And I had like safe numbers that I would do things in, particularly studying. And so I would, I did this for years, guys. This is true. You can ask my best friend. This is facts. I would read through my material 3, 5, or 7 times, 3, 5, or 7 days before an exam. And basically the belief behind that was like, I won't get an A unless I do it this way, even if I feel like I know the material or something. And so I did it that way for the entire 4 years I was in college, and I got an A on absolutely everything. So it was reinforced for me to count and do things in a certain number because it was working for the outcome I wanted, which was to get an A. Ironically, like a lot of my counting stuff, like just left me. I didn't really work on it. I just kind of stopped being a big thing when I left college. And now I would say it's more like I notice things, or I notice numbers, or I like things to like end on certain numbers, but it doesn't go quite as far as having safe numbers and needing things to be in that pattern anymore. Okay, some other specific examples are checking doors over and over again to make sure they're locked, checking the stove over again to make sure it's off, silently repeating a prayer, word, or phrase, trying to replace a bad thought with a good thought, and arranging your canned goods to face the same way. More specific examples. Okay, let's talk about causes. Causes of OCD are not yet fully established, which I think is really interesting at this point when I was like doing some new research to put this slide deck together. But then again, the causes for many of these things like ADHD as well, particularly things that we need psychological testing for, are not real clear. So some of that makes sense. Many people with OCD have this genetic predisposition to it, but no specific genes have really been identified. I actually think I found in a different article that a couple specific genes have been identified, but they just don't really know what about them causes the OCD. Also, a few like external or environmental things. So genetic predisposition means in your gene makeup, you could develop OCD. You're kind of primed for it. It maybe depends on what happens in your life and or your body, right? So you might not necessarily develop OCD, but you have a genetic predisposition for it. That could cause it. Some environmental things that can cause it are traumatic brain injury, a bacterial or viral infection, particularly I saw strep throat, streptococcus, whatever that is. And I don't know if it's just having it once or like having a really bad case of it, but that is something that I saw. And stress can bring on OCD. Some other maybe external or environmental things, childhood trauma, abuse, and neglect. I am 99.9% sure this is why I have OCD. Changes in the frontal cortex and subcortical parts of your brain. Those are the same parts that cause Parkinson's disease, Tourette's syndrome, and epilepsy. So they can see via neuroscience and fMRI scans, like you guys have heard me talk about before, changes in the frontal cortex and subcortical parts of your brain. In somebody diagnosed with OCD, and they see changes in those same brain areas for other disorders like Parkinson's disease, Tourette's, and epilepsy. I find that interesting. Also, it's interesting to me that my mom died of Parkinson's disease. So there's obviously some genetic predisposition or genetic link, I would say, between OCD and Parkinson's disease. And so that maybe makes sense to me. It's interesting. PANDAS syndrome, which I can't give you what the PANDAS stands for. Where you guys can look it up, PANDAS syndrome, which can affect children who've had infection like strep throat or scarlet fever. Okay, here you go with some of that more information. And, it's going to be related to having a really bad case of strep throat or scarlet fever. It's really interesting as I think about this too. I had strep throat many times as a kid, like at least 3, if not more than that. And I had it once as an adult that required antibiotic. So, I don't really know if that caused it in addition to some other things. Maybe I got strep throat a lot because of childhood trauma and my nervous system, sort of reacting to things, I don't know. So this is part of why solidified causes are not yet established, but there are some things like, it's not to say that if you had childhood trauma that you will have OCD, but it's saying if you do have OCD and we look back and we see many of those folks had childhood trauma, it kind of works that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I found this chart that I thought was helpful. So according to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, text version 5, it's what I use to diagnose folks in my practice. And according to this, there are some conditions that are directly related to OCD. And those include body dysmorphia disorder, hoarding disorder, hair pulling, and excoriation disorder, which I'm going to talk more about next week, skin picking. And so the DSM-5 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorder classification, and the ICD-11 is the medical classification. So in the medical classification, they are linking body dysmorphia, hoarding disorder, hair pulling, skin picking, as well as hypochondriasis, olfactory reference syndrome, which I'm not sure what that is, and Tourette syndrome, to OCD, which, yeah, in some ways I can see that. What are outcomes? Or like what happens, I guess, like in the lives of people with OCD is how I would say outcomes. The types of obsessions and compulsions you have can also change over time. I told you guys I used to do a lot of counting. I don't really do that anymore. I have some different symptoms that are maybe worse than the counting, but maybe equivalent in intensity to the counting at the time that was like sort of a high symptom for me. So symptoms generally get worse when you're under greater stress. Absolutely true, including times of transition and change. Absolutely true for me as well. OCD, usually thought to be a lifelong disorder, can have mild to moderate symptoms or be so severe and time consuming that it becomes disabling. So it could kind of like wax and wane, ebb and flow. I've definitely had that experience. Now that I know that this is a diagnosis that I have, I can look back and see where they've kind of waxed and waned. The counting is the greatest example I have of that, that I could share with you guys, but I've noticed this in some of my other OCD symptoms. And of course, this can have a huge impact on your day-to-day life. It can impact relationships, self-confidence, social life, schoolwork, ordinary tasks, mood, and of course, your daily routine. If it's taken up with a lot of compulsions and or obsessive thoughts, it's really just interrupting from you being present-minded in the present moment, right? Like we're often distracted or stuck in these obsessions or compulsive behaviors. So diagnosis and treatment, you heard me say earlier, the only way to accurately diagnose OCD is with a psychological evaluation. There's no brain imaging or blood test that can diagnose OCD. The brain imaging that they see, the changes in brain structures, they can't diagnose that way. They're just seeing a related link sort of with that. And according to Mental Health America, people with OCD spend an average of more than 9 years going to doctors and seeking treatment before receiving a correct diagnosis. And that breaks my heart. And I guess if you think about me, it was 36 years. And I wasn't necessarily always seeking treatment for OCD, but it did not come into view as a reason for any of the things I was experiencing. And so that's heartbreaking, guys. Like that's very debilitating. And not only is like misdiagnosis higher or getting missed, I also find in medical settings, there's a lot of invalidation and dismissal of patients discussing symptoms or even ideas of what they're related to if the doctor doesn't agree or wants to attribute it to a more medical. I put quotes around that because I don't think they're more medical, but I think a lot of medical doctors think that things like, I don't even know how to like, high blood pressure is related to a medical thing, right? Like stress or stress-induced physical symptoms, right? Related to a medical thing. And in my experience, like if I get a little bit on my soapbox, like medical providers, particularly primary care providers, are not good at assessing any mental health difficulty. I don't think they try. And if they do try, I don't think they have good tools, and I don't think they take long enough, and I don't think they really know. So if you suspect that you have any sort of mental health disorder, I encourage you to see a mental health provider, whether that is a clinical psychologist, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, a psychiatrist, a licensed therapist. Even if you start with a licensed therapist, they will help you start to sort out your symptoms and whether it would be a good idea to follow up with psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner or a clinical psychologist for further testing. So go see a specialist, see a mental health specialist, even if it's a therapist, because they will help you advocate and navigate the medical health system so that you can get the care that you need for your mental health disorder, because I feel like our medical system is not set up well for that. And things like this get dismissed or misdiagnosed, and it's unfortunate. Specific treatment options for OCD include cognitive behavioral therapy. This is what I use in my practice, and psychodynamic therapy, which I also use in my practice. Exposure and response prevention therapy. People know this as exposure therapy. I do elements of this in my CBT, but I don't follow exposure therapy to a T. But that can be helpful for folks. Medications, potentially SSRIs, and lifestyle and self-care like mindfulness, slowing down, challenging some of those intrusive thoughts, learning to self-soothe in other ways that aren't the compulsive behaviors. Okay. Look at that. 3 minutes to go, and I already wrapped all that up. Look at me go today. How can I further help you in understanding OCD? Well, you guys know there are some freebies on my website. You can go there right now and download these. You don't have to interact with me at all. You don't have to sign up for an email list or anything. These are just resources that you can go and grab. 10 natural remedies for anxiety. These are things that you can do for anxiety that are not medication or pharmacological in nature. So nothing prescribed, nothing like that. So natural remedies for anxiety. And you can also grab my mindfulness exercises ebook that has, I think 70, maybe more than 70. I think at least 70 mindfulness exercises that you can do to start practice being present with yourself and present with your space and aware of that presence at that time. That's what mindfulness is, and it gives you some activities for that. You can also purchase my self-care kit, which is a digital download bundled sort of workbook. There are several documents that you get with this. It's really comprehensive. It has journal prompts. It has worksheets. It has inventories. It has factual and educational information, kind of like the things that I talk about in here to let you understand maybe some of the neuroscience and other things behind doing some things within self-care. So that's a digital download. You can go purchase it on my website right now for $19. Again, that website is www.sarahobrianlcsw.com. Also, the Dealing with Negative Thinking digital workbook, that's $19. This is fantastic for anybody with any anxiety or depression whatsoever. If you struggle ever with negative thinking, you want to go get this digital workbook of mine. It is extremely comprehensive in helping you deal with negative thinking. You can go at your own pace. There are journal prompts, there are exercises, there's information, there's all kinds of things that you can have and use again and again. I also do skills coaching. So if you want to learn better habits, like mindfulness, and actually practice that with a coach, learn better strategies for managing anxiety, like maybe using some of those natural remedies, and you want to do it with a coach, sort of keep you accountable and walk you through these things. I am available for that. I am a trauma-informed provider all around. So you will get trauma-informed care, whether you see me for psychotherapy, coaching, or consulting services. And I also do business to business consulting, speaking, writing, training, all the things I've talked about before. So if you need somebody for that, come and get me. Today is the 21st of August, and we are talking about OCD. Next week, I am going to be talking about excoriation disorder or skin picking disorder. This is also something I struggle with. I'm sure it's related to my trauma and my OCD, and we're going to learn all about that next week. Who am I? I am Sarah Fargo O'Brien. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Virginia and Maryland. I actually do have some spots for some psychotherapy clients. We are in August 2025. So if you live in Virginia or Maryland, I can be your therapist. Reach out to me to schedule an intake assessment today. Like I said, I'm also a trauma-informed skills coach and consultant, and a trauma-informed leader strategist, speaker trainer, content writer, with lots of works under my belt. I have been published in 3 books. I have over 60 external publications, and then I usually publish a blog myself every month. So in the last 3 years, lots of published works. If you need a content writer, I am your person. Go check out my fun creations, my self-care merch, affirmations, love yourself, fun things, fun sayings, fun designs. You can get them on stickers, notebooks, hats, t-shirts, hoodies, and more. Scan the QR code to go to my Redbubble shop called the Thrive and Shine shop. All right, and we are at the end here. Thank you, Chasen. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Leanna, for joining me this morning. My tried and true 3 musketeers popping in. You do make it more interesting for me, and I love interacting with you, and I appreciate you showing up every week. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. I can't say it enough. Again, you can find everything you need to know about me, about the work I do, all the freebies, signing up for my newsletter, finding my merch shop, all episodes of my podcast, links to things, speaking events I've done, everything and more on my very comprehensive website that I designed and maintained myself. Thank you very much. I'm proud of that. At www.sarahobrienlcsw.com. Friends of the Healing Hour, Let's Be Diverse podcast, and Andrew Stout. Be sure to check out his podcast. He is also co-hosting an event this coming Monday, the 25th, where my buddy Chasen will be speaking, and profits from that will go to the nonprofit that is putting on, and I can't remember the name of it, the nonprofit that's putting on the event on Monday. So go check out Andrew Stout's LinkedIn profile for more information about that. I will be listing off some friends of the Healing Hour podcast as they come along. If you want to be a friend of the Healing Hour podcast, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to give you a little bit of airtime on my show. All right, that's it. You know what we're doing next week. We're talking about skin picking disorder. If there are any topics, disorders, anything that you guys want me to talk about, please let me know. I'm happy to, do whatever, as relating to the Healing Hour, which is pretty open for me. I can make that a lot of things. It's hard to come up with a new topic every week and give you guys a slide deck of information every week. So if you have any ideas, I would love them. They would help give my brain a break from trying to come up with new and interesting things for you guys. That's all I have for you today. I have lots of other work going on that hopefully I can get to because I'm still not feeling very well. So take care of yourselves as I remind myself to take care of myself. You matter. You are worthy. You are loved. Even if you feel alone, you are not alone. Remember that. Tell your friends about my podcast. Go to my YouTube channel to subscribe. That's just YouTube/@timeless_therapist. That is also the name of my newsletter, the Timeless Therapist newsletter. Timeless Therapist is me, Sarah Fargo O'Brien. So go subscribe to catch all the replays of this podcast, and tell your friends. I would appreciate some more subscribers. Thank you to everybody. I will see you again next week. I always try to do this so you guys can see me at the end. I'll see you next week. I'm so glad for everybody that was here. Again, I appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.